Hello, world, at this point, and welcome to a very unique episode of what was I about to say? Flying saucers and what have you? No, that's an old terminology. I'm Don Emilio Zeno, and I'm blessed tonight to have two very, very special people who will be talking about a very important, iconic case, the case of the Pascagoula ET UFO affair featuring none other than Calvin Parker. Calvin, welcome to our special interview. Thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I
Well,
enjoy I enjoy getting out and speaking some.
no, you're very kind. You're very kind. We heard so much about you. And because it was you, Calvin Parker, as we said off air, I wanted to get a very special person that I'm extremely proud of, who's got a whole slew of experience in dealing with ET UFO matters, and it happens to be none other than world renowned Victor Vigiani from Zealand Communications. Victor, thank you for being here. I feel a
It's a
whole
pleasure,
lot better.
Don. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So, guys, if you want to take it from there, I think the world wants to know some of the things that they've been questioning since that very famous October 1973 when you were abducted by off world civilizations. Guys, take it from there, please.
Thanks, Don, and welcome, Calvin. Great to be talking to you, and I know you've got an incredible story to tell. So let's kind of get to it because, as I said off air just a few moments ago, there are a lot of people out there who have gone through this experience and aren't willing to talk about the whole thing. And not because they don't want to. It's just it's something that eats away at them, and I think that it's something that people tend to avoid. And then there's another category of people out there who have been through this and they have no idea what it's all about. And I'm referring to possibly children, uh, adults that may be mentally ill, the homeless, people who have no idea what has happened to them and they're just trying to figure it out in addition to some of the people that have been through this and fully realize that it was something that shattered their entire reality. It shattered everything about their being, everything that they know, and I guess that would be in your category. So if you want to just give us a brief overview of that day when you were fishing with your friend Charlie by that swamp, and you saw this metal boat that you thought was floating out on the water over the river, and I think, as I recall, you were thinking to yourself that how can a metal boat like that float? And then after that, things really heated up with the blue lights and then the white lights. So I'll let you take it from there and maybe give us a bit of an intro as to how you came about being at the river at the time with Charles.
Well, I had just started to work. Uh, my first day at work, and Charlie wanted to go fishing. And like you say, we got down to the river, we was sitting on the pier, and I was looking across the river at a ship, and it was made out of steel. And I was thinking, now how does something made out of steel float? And about that time, during my thoughts, I seen a blue light. Of course, we were trespassing. We shouldn't have been there to start with. But I seen a blue, hazy light, the same color as the patrol cars, reflecting across the water from behind me. And I stood up and I turned around. I told Charlie, I said, "You're going to pay my way out of jail because I didn't want to come here to start with." So, but as we turned around and looked at these blue hazy lights, there was one big bright light just got extremely bright and shined on us. It was to the point that it was almost blinding. So time we was recovering, our eyes was recovering kind of from that. We noticed there was three bulky creatures, kind of looked like Green Bay Packers coming toward us. They didn't they didn't have a neck and all, and they kind of moved like robots to me. You know, that you could tell they was mechanical moving when they was headed toward us, and their hands look like they had mittens on, or I call them crab-like hands because down here, you know, we have crabs, and that's kind of what they remind me of. So two of them got a hold of Charlie, and one of them got a hold of myself, and immediately I felt an injection in my left arm. And that just kind of relaxed me because, you know, I was kind of getting worried there a little before. It wasn't nowhere to run. There was water on the front, water on the left, water on the right, and sure couldn't run behind us because the crap or whatever it was sitting back there. But immediately after this injection and later on in the hospital, I found out that's what it was. Uh, they just kind of relaxed me, and they lifted us up kind of effortlessly by my left arm and just kind of glided us up to the front of the ship, to the doorway, I might as well say. And that's where all the light was coming out of the doorway. Because I distinctly remember looking to see if I could see it like a searchlight or something like that. Because initially I thought it was just a few old rednecks playing a joke on us out there. But, you know, come to find out it got a lot more serious. But the lights was coming out of the walls. It wasn't any light fixtures whatsoever. Well, this thing, and now I'm paralyzed more or less. I can roll my head, I can roll my eyes. But this thing kind of made a left turn, a little left jog, brought me down the hallway, and then made a right turn and took me into what I call the examination room. And there was a beautiful table in this room. It was made out of glass or might have been crystal. Anyhow, it was a beautiful table. And he carried me over and he laid me on this table, and I was at a little degree, at a little angle here, looking straight up at the ceiling. And then out of the ceiling, something dropped down to my right between my eyes, almost about a foot and a half from my head, about the size of a deck of cards, and it started revolving around my head, and as it would go around, it clicked. And then when it got back up in front of my head, it just shot straight up into the air, went back into the ceiling. And that's when I kind of sensed, I didn't hear nothing or feel nothing. I just kind of sensed the presence of someone or something else. And I kind of rolled my head to the right a little bit, and that's when I noticed there was this. Now I'm calling her a female. I don't know if she was female or not, or what she was, but I call her a female alien, I guess now. She come toward me, and she looked normal, and she looked just like your everyday redneck would look, I guess, down here. She had the only difference I could tell was her hands, and her two middle fingers was longer on each hand than what it would normally be. And she grabbed me by the cheek, but I couldn't feel any sensation at all in her hands. I couldn't feel any warmth or any feelings or anything. But what got me the next thing, she got her other hand and she put on my chin and she pushed my jaw down, and she run the other hand, the two middle fingers, back behind that little deal that hangs down in your throat, and tried to come up, I guess, in my nasal cavity. Well, I started choking and bleeding, and you know, it's hard to breathe with
Mm-hmm.
somebody's fingers down your throat.
Mm-hmm.
So once I got in a little stress there, though, she did take them out, and she mentally, and this was strange. She mentally, and I don't know why I say she, but she mentally said, "We're not going to harm you." Now, I never did understand the "we're not" part, because I'm almost sure that other being was robotic, and she might have had a disguise like a woman or something. I don't know.
Hmm.
But her voice was in the voice of just a redneck woman from down here in the South. I never did understand that, 'cause she
You mean that
definitely,
the sound of her voice had a southern accent?
it did. And that's why I'm thinking that it was probably a woman. And I believe they probably do their homework before they come down and, you know, examine the area and the language and the accents so that they're not so frightening and all. But her voice was just like a old redneck girl you'd meet in a bar somewhere.
Now, when you say that she spoke to you, did she ever verbally out loud, or was it all telepathic?
No, it was all telepathic.
Okay.
I've never seen her mouth move.
Did
It
you actually hear the words, like as I'm speaking to you now, hear words in your mind, or were they pictures? Were they feelings, or what?
No, I actually heard the words just like she was
Okay.
standing in the room with me and talking. And that's always puzzled me too. You think about a lot of things in the past, and that's one of them
Mm.
that got my attention. Well, when she said that, she kind of backed up out of the way and made a mumbling noise with her throat. Now, I physically heard this also, and I could tell her throat moving. And I don't know if you ever heard the mating call of an alligator, but it just bounces all over the swamp. And when she made this mumbling call, uh, this robotic creature that was backed up against the wall over there, he sprung up like a jack in the box and came over toward me and grabbed me by the arm. And that's when I felt the next injection into my arm. And I don't know, I guess they was through with me because he picked me up. He carried me back out to about the same spot they had picked us up in, except I was facing the river with my arms outstretched. Now, this is the first time I've heard Charlie's voice or anything from the whole time this happened because I didn't see him go in. We couldn't see each other probably.
Hmm.
But he said, Calvin, Calvin, you okay, son? And I thought, well, you idiot. No, I'm not all right because, look what we've been through. And then about that time, we stood up and we turned around and looked. And they was already back. The bright light went off that was shining. And this thing picked up off the ground a little bit. And like a streak of lightning, it just disappeared up into the sky.
My goodness. If I could just trace back a moment, I want to sort of review a few things. When you, in one of your interviews, I believe, as you were approaching the river, you and Charlie were moving towards the river through the grass or the swamp or whatever it was. Later on, you testified that uh, there was a car there with two people in it.
Right.
Yeah, and when you first went down to the river the very first time, did you see the car then, or did you notice it, or do you just
No,
remember it later on?
I remembered it later on.
I see. I see.
And
Okay.
that was came out of regression with Bud Hopkins
But yeah. Okay.
when I seen him, and then later on also with Kathleen Martin when
I
she
see. Yeah.
regressed
Yeah.
me back just here
Yeah.
not long. But I was
Did you?
able to call the license plate number and all
That's
on
right.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating.
It
Okay. I
is.
just I just want to sort of go back to the being carried into this craft, and you didn't see any direct light. It was sort of coming from all over the place. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
It
sort of
looked
an infusion of light. And then, was there a platform or a table where did they put you on something? What was that all about?
uh I call it a examination table.
Okay,
It was just a table laid out and it was sitting on an angle, like a 45-degree angle like
I
that,
see.
with my feet facing kind of down and my head a little higher than my feet.
Mhm.
Now, the purpose for all that, I don't know.
Right. And you remained fully clothed during the whole thing? Did you
Yes, sir,
remember?
I
You
did.
did. You did. And do you recall either through your own conscious recollections or with any other regression that you went through with Bud, do you remember any other procedures that you went through other than her inserting her fingers into your throat?
No, sir, I don't.
No way. No.
And
Okay.
that was pretty painful, so
Mm.
of course I remember something like that.
Of course. Do you have any recollection at all as if she was trying to retrieve something that was in your nasal cavity or put something there? Or did you have no way of knowing that?
I don't have any way of knowing. All I know is I was bleeding so much, even when she pulled her fingers out of my throat and I could
Hmm.
catch my breath.
Hmm.
I was bleeding, and I never had nosebleeds up until then. But
Hmm.
after that, I started having frequent nosebleeds, and still have them on a pretty regular basis. So,
Is that right?
yes, sir.
Now, you said that you went through a series of examinations either at the Air Force Base or to the doctors. Did they ever take any X-rays of your nasal cavity to find out if anything was inserted, an implant of anything like that?
No, sir, they didn't. They did blood work.
They did.
The Sangan River Hospital did, and we was checked for radiation at Keesler.
Hmm.
But that nobody ever, I don't guess, thought to do an X-ray or nothing.
Right. Right.
Now, the
That's
only thing, closest thing I had to one when I had my heart attack and all MRI when I had the
mhm.
stroke, and they didn't find anything then. Of course, they wasn't looking for that.
I see. How about let's go back to the other beings, the other creatures. How many were there? You said there were two?
Three of them.
Three of them. Three of them.
Yes, sir.
So two of them took you, and one of them took Charlie.
No, sir. One of them took myself, and two of them
Okay.
got a hold of Charlie.
Okay. And he went into this. He went into the craft with you, but then that's the last time you saw him.
Well, I know that he was going toward the craft, but I never seen him inside the craft or nothing
Oh, I see.
then.
Did he recall to you that he was also went through some sort of procedure with people inside the craft, or not?
Well, he didn't recall it to me. The only way I knew it was later on. I read the book that he wrote, and that was
Okay.
just here recently. And he talked about a big camera or a big eye staring at him. So I'm assuming that that was that thing that came out of the ceiling. So it sounded like we went through the same thing.
I see. Similar. I see.
See, we quit talking because I didn't want to go public with this
Mm-hmm.
story at all.
Right.
And Charlie felt the urge to go public with the story.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I guess he felt like he needed to talk about it or tell somebody. And actually, I think he was the one that broke the story to start with. So that made me mad because we'd sat there and agreed not to tell nobody.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So we
Now
went.
let's go back inside. And there was a device that you described as a piece of something that looked like a deck of cards that came down. What was that all about?
I don't know unless it was some kind of medical equipment that they might have had that was more advanced than something that we had to, because it came down and dropped straight in front of my face, in front of my eyes like that, about a foot and a half, and
Hmm.
then it just revolved around my head. But you could hear it clicking. Now that was the only other noise that I heard in there. It'd go click, click. Did that four times before it shot back up into the ceiling.
And there was no. Was the female uh, present when that was happening, or was that before or
That
during
was
her presence?
that was she wasn't present right then when this was happening. She
Oh,
was
I see.
standing, kind of standing offish, I guess.
Mm.
Uh, but when this thing shot back up into the ceiling, that's when she came out.
Oh, I see. Now, when she came in to the how did she approach you? Did she come straight at you from the side? Did you get where did you get the sense that she came from?
Well, I kind of, like I say, I was, you know how you just kind of sense somebody else is around.
Hmm.
and I kind of rolled my head and looked, and she was on my right side, and came out, I guess, a little room over there.
I see.
But the funny thing about all this, I sensed that they might have been more back there looking, or taking all this in. Now, I didn't see a window or a mirror or anything or a
Hmm.
door she came out of, but it's just something telling me that there was more back there.
More people?
I feel like it was, yes,
Is
sir.
that
I
right? That
didn't
was a
see
sense
them.
that you had. I see. Yeah. What was she? How was she clothed?
She, this is strange, and I just with Kathleen Martin, we just come up with a color of clothes, kind of bluish gray green, but she had clothes on. I guess some kind of little jumpsuit, but she didn't have any breast or anything like that. Just kind of clothes that would blend into her body.
I see.
Now the old big ugly one, I don't believe he had anything on, but he had a gray, wrinkled looking skin, kind of. So that might have been some kind of suit or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
I have a question because based on the pictures that we've seen, they were like reptilian scales, for lack of better words. Is that a plausible explanation?
Well, now I didn't see that.
I mean,
The
from the photos, based on your book and the various photos that were shown in the last 46 years.
uh, well now the the big robotic looking creature had kind of looked like elephant skin in a way, or a manatee or elephant.
All right, okay,
Hmm.
or okay, like a
Yeah,
scaly type of, you
yeah,
know, body persona. Yeah.
right.
Okay,
Now
I'm sorry. Please continue. Yeah.
the female, I don't know if she might have had a mask on or something, but she looked pretty normal. I'd
Hmm.
always said, if I'd met her in a bar and had a few drinks, I'd ask her out on a date. So,
Well, that was some date, whether you
yeah,
asked for it or not.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, I want to go back to the female again, because the impression that I've heard is that you sensed that she was a female. That was one aspect of it, but then there was the other aspect that she
Her
looked human,
voice.
but you kind of had a feeling that she was alien. What made her look more alien than someone who was looking human?
Well, one thing, that old big ugly thing, I just kind of seen sitting in the corner,
Hmm.
and them coming down in some kind of craft. You know, back in '73, I had no idea what an alien was or spaceship was. Never even thought about it. Never watched one on the news. The closest thing I watched was the Apollo missions coming in, and seeing that they quarantined their people away from their families and all for 7 days. And when she came in, I wasn't for sure what she was. I still, to this day, am not for sure what she was or where she came from. And I had that talk with Paul Hynek at the last convention we was in. We was in Arizona at UFO Congress, and I also talked to a lot of the people that you had mentioned there. All I was hunting's answers. I don't know where they came from or what they're doing, and I would love to know where they did come from, and why they even picked us, Charlie and I. But I don't know.
So that you never got the feeling from her or even from the other creatures any reason or any exchange of words or whatever to explain what they were doing or why they were doing this. It was just they just used you. They just whatever.
Yeah, it was like Doctor Hynek and I had talked about when I got to meet him. Uh, it's like a crime. They the police should have went down where this happened and put some crime tape up, left somebody there to daylight, but they didn't. but it's like somebody kicking your door down in your house and dragging you out to a van and examine you and then take you back. Well, that's a crime. That's home invasion or
Mm-hmm.
kidnapping or whatever you call it. But back then they didn't have the means to investigate like they do now. Everybody nowadays carries a cell phone, a camera. You got a cell phone, camera, and computer on your sides. Back in, you was lucky if you had a camera in the car, just one of them old disposable ones.
Mm-hmm.
And cell phones was out of the question. I remember when I got my first cell phone, my bill was $800, and I didn't realize that, and I throwed it away like I never did get it paid off.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big difference now in social media and sitting down and writing a letter back then.
For sure, for sure. Let's go back to the very, very beginning, and I think we might want to get to this a little bit later on when you returned. This thing of missing time. It's what time the first incident? Okay, what time of day was it when it began? Do you recall?
Well, I really, yeah, it was around 5:30, 6 o'clock, because it was just getting dark, but the moon was so bright and so full then, you really couldn't tell it was
Hmm.
dark.
Hmm.
So, but then we got to the sheriff's department. We didn't leave there till a little after 11 o'clock.
So the sequence of time that this thing began, and when you went to the sheriff's office, and it was just a regular, normal time. How long do you figure you were gone?
Figure a couple, maybe hour and a half, something like
Okay,
that.
okay, okay. But there wasn't any particular sense that you had of missing time. It wasn't like 3 o'clock in the morning. You didn't you completely missed everything.
Oh, no, sir. No,
No,
sir. It
okay.
wasn't like
Now,
that.
but then again, you related a situation where you went fishing. I'm not sure if Charles was with you, but you went fishing and you told someone in your family, "I'm going fishing, and if I'm not back by certain time, um, call the Coast
This
Guard or whatever." And and by the time you were sitting down to get set to eat your lunch, uh, it was all of a sudden it was I don't know how many hours,
3 o'clock in the
5:30,
morning.
whatever. It was
Yeah.
dark. What
Yeah.
happened there?
This was in 1993. And I didn't fish at night anymore back then.
Hmm.
So I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go to fishing. I got in a boat and I run to Cat Island, which is probably a 35, 40-minute run. And when I got to the island, I was waiting on a tide change. I just anchored up. And I was sitting there eating my lunch. Well, this was around lunchtime, probably 11, 12 o'clock, somewhere in there. And the next thing I knew, when I woke up, it was dark, and made my way back to the truck, and that happened to be 3 o'clock in the morning when I got to my truck. So my wife had done left notes on the car and all because she knew to call the Coast Guard
Hmm.
if I was gone very long, and she had actually called them one time, and they said to give it a little longer that something might have happened. I stayed a little longer.
Hmm.
But this was three, and that's what really bothered me, and this is why I went to meet Bud Hopkins. Uh, Told a friend of mine about it the next day. I got all this missing time. Well, for some reason, he was always wanting to hang around with me. He was a TV guy from Channel 25, and he would come over and visit. We become friends during all this. And he was always wanting to do an interview, and I wouldn't do it. So I had mentioned that to him, but he, on the other hand, had started studying into different cases. He said, "There's a guy in Florida that has written books on missing times, and I'd like for you to go talk to him." So he convinced me, and this is the one and only time, I went into a conference then, but I didn't go into the conference. I just went there specially to see Bud Hopkins. So I wouldn't go in, and he went in and asked Bud, told Bud who I was. Bud said, "Oh, I know of him. I would love to meet him." He said, "Y'all go to my room. I'll be through here speaking in a few minutes." Well, just so happened that Bud Hopkins was down there with Debbie Jordan when all this happened, and he invited her to come along. And I had my friend and his wife there with me, and we went. They came. Bud came to the room, and we started talking. I had told him what happened, and he said, "Well, could I hypnotize you?" I said, "Well, I don't know if I could be hypnotized or not. I don't even know what hypnosis is at this time." So he said, "No, give me a chance. Maybe it'll kind of refresh your memory and we can come up with this." Of course, Debbie was sitting there and she said, "It works for me." Well, I didn't know who in the world Debbie Jordan was or Bud Hopkins was or anybody else because I just didn't keep up with these people back in. So I agreed to let him hypnotize me. But I said, "Now look, I'm going to leave my friend in this room. I don't want you to put no thoughts into my head. I don't want you to do me like one of these Las Vegas sideshows and make me get up and look stupid." I said, "If you do, there's a ball bat in the trunk of my car, and he's going to take it and hit you right between the damn eyes with it and hand me the ball bat back and leave." He said, "Oh, okay, okay." So anyhow, I didn't feel like Bud had hypnotized me. I felt like I was just there a few minutes, and he tried and nothing happened. Then when I got to writing this book, when I agreed to write the book with Philip, and him and my wife pressured me into all this, I had brought up, well, the only person I ever met in this field here was a guy named Bud Hopkins, and he tried to hypnotize me, but he couldn't. He said, "Oh, me and Bud's personal friends, or was, and he's dead now." I said, "Well, I hate to hear it. Sound like a pretty good guy." But he said, "Dr. Jacobs has taken over his work, and I can get a copy of that tape." I said, "Well, there's nothing on it, but if you want to get a copy, go ahead." Well, Dr. Jacobs called me and asked if it was all right to give it to Philip Mantle. I said, "Well, of course it is." Well, Philip got the tape, and little did I know, he said, "Well, I am transcribing this tape out." He said, "It's real quiet, and I'm having it." Well, I was wondering what took him so long because I didn't think I was under but maybe 3, 4 minutes at the most, and I never did go under. But what had happened, Bud had put a post hypnotic suggestion in my head that I wouldn't remember none of this until it was time for me to remember all this. So when I got the transcripts back, I kind of just started glancing through them. I didn't want to read them. I told my wife, I said, you know, that guy did hypnotize me. I didn't realize this. I went out on the porch. She was out there. I said, "I don't want to read this. I want you to go read it. And as I remember this, you tell me if I'm right or wrong." Well, she come in and she stayed in the room back here for about 45 minutes, come out crying. I said, "What in the world's wrong with you?" She said, "I just can't handle no more of it." Well, I didn't push the issue then for her to go ahead and read, but my curiosity was there. Well, it just so happened a few nights later, I had an interview with Linda Moulton Howe. Well, Linda Howe is a heck of a reporter. I mean, she gets to the facts real quick. She investigates everything. She don't leave a stone unturned. Well, while we was over there, she hit a few key words that roused up this hypnosis, and it started kind of coming back to me like a film then. And I went out and again, I didn't want to read it, but as I remembered it, I'd write it down and all that. Then when I started remembering all of it, I got up and I read it, and it was spot on. I mean, and God knows I didn't realize I'd even been hypnotized then. Uh-oh. You're you went silent.
We can't
Sorry,
hear you, Victor.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, sorry, my microphone was off. Sorry, apologies. So you went through all of that, and was this a conscious recollection now? Everything just sort of poured forth. Is that what happened?
it's very conscious, yes, sir.
Yeah.
And then when uh Kathleen, she came down right there. I got to know her during this UFO Congress. We had kind of a booth together where we was both selling a few books. We was sitting there talking, and I found out her background, and she even has a background in forensic and all that.
Hmm.
So I was thinking I would love. Bud had all this two cases kind of rambled in together here, and I was thinking I would love maybe Kathleen could come down, hypnotize me, not lead me into any questions or nothing, and we could separate all this out. So she did. She agreed to fly down here. She came down about a week when I got back from Congress, hypnotized me, came to the house, and I stayed under 3 hours that time. But the thing about it, I remembered everything. But she would ask me not specific details, but she would just say stuff like, and then. But it sharpened up my view of everything. And that's how we figured out, like the color of the clothes and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
we went back over some of the details in the car.
Right. We are speaking with Calvin Parker. He's the major figure in Calvin Parker, the Pascagoula UFO incident, and his new book, Pascagoula, The Closest Encounter, My Story. Let's go back to exactly what you were just talking about, Calvin, with respect to what you originally remembered. You remembered being carried in, her reaching into your nasal cavity, and that thing twirling around, and these creatures escorting you in and out. Uh, so, what else? What did you in fact remember that was more than what you've just told us to begin with? Was there additional details? Are there further examinations? What happened in addition to everything else that you remember that was brought forward by the hypnosis?
Well, what Bud had brought forward, and the reason my wife was crying was in '93 when I went out. I actually got into uh, a physical fight with a female alien. I had made up my mind. I mean, she was trying to get back into my nasal cavity and had me standing up by the wall over there. And apparently, the drug the big ugly one gave me didn't work as good this time. And I made up my mind that, look, you know, back in '73, I went through all this. There's no way I could prove it. People just take you at face value or your word, the ones that know you.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but this time I'm going to prove it because if I find a door, I'm grabbing her around her little skinny neck and me and her's going out the door. Now, I might not be alive and she might not be when we hit that water, but when they find us, we're going to be together because I'm going to have her clenched in my hands.
Mm-hmm.
So I beat her head against the wall and she started bleeding, black looking blood and all. And all this came out and later it come out in memories and we actually got into a physical fight. And that's one thing that makes this case a little unique toward everybody else. Most everybody says, well, I wish they'd come get me. I said, I wish the hell they would too. I'd rather it be you than me. I don't want to go back. I have no plans on it.
Yeah.
I have a
So, so,
question,
uh,
guys,
so a
if you
lot,
don't
a
mind.
lot more happened. A lot more happened in the second incident that you recall vividly.
Yes,
It-
sir.
it- okay. Now, did it happen in the same way? Or do you remember any creatures coming to get you? Because there's all this missing time. How did you enter the craft? What happened inside the craft the second time?
Well, I was on my boat fishing and uh, I remember looking up at a cloud because this cloud looked kind of unusual and all. But under the bottom of the crowd, you could see the craft, and they just kind of like William Shatner with Star Trek, just kind of beams you up into the craft. And I never would have believed it. I never would have thought it. But that's how they got me aboard this time. And I was there, and she more or less was on a mission this time. And I think that maybe I had something implanted in my nose, and she was there to get it out. And I
Mhm.
was sick of this stuff. You eventually get tired of women running their fingers down your throat and trying to choke you and all. So I
Mm-hmm.
was sick of it, and I wasn't going to take no more. And I was pretty healthy youngin' back in. And
So, in other words, my understanding, you were abducted the first time in 1973, October, and then in 1993. Is that correct, if I'm listening carefully?
yes, sir, that's correct.
Right.
Two,
And you had passed, during the week on the first abduction, you had passed a lie detection exam test.
I passed two polygraph tests and a voice stress test. Now, I had no idea what a voice stress test was or how accurate they are or anything. But somebody wanted me to come to Mobile one day, and they had a little box that they'd ask me questions in, like, and a microphone set up, and I'd answer the questions. And he told me that this is actually more accurate than what a polygraph test is. Of course, I guess if you believe something, and I've done a little research on them since then. Of course, I knew what happened. I didn't have to prove it to nobody because I wasn't going to tell nobody anyway. But if you believe something hard enough, then you could pass a polygraph test, I guess. I know that Charlie had passed one, and Philip Class wanted to argue about his examiner that gave it to him wasn't qualified and all that. And that's when I told Philip Class, I'd rip his head off and make funny remarks about it. Actually, you know, I really had it out with Philip, and it wasn't over me, it was over Charlie, because he was more or less insulting Charlie in my presence. And, Charlie was a friend, even though we wasn't close at the time this happened, but I was with him when this happened. And I didn't want to hear old Philip's bull. So me and him actually got into it, and I missed out on a free meal in New Orleans with some seafood because of it. They throwed me out of the restaurant.
Hmm.
But
Now, yeah, I just want to ask you.
Victor,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah.
I just want to remind you, as we're nearing the 43-minute mark, and we
Okay.
want to keep this under an hour if
Sure,
possible
sure.
for
Yeah.
our dear viewers and listeners. But I also want to play the excerpt from Charlie Hickson, and I want to, our good friend Calvin Parker to corroborate that very famous recording that I have a copy of. You know which one I'm referring to, Calvin, right?
I
It's
think
it's about
so.
yeah, it's about 11 minutes. So I'm going to let you wrap up your questioning, and I'd like to see if I can bring it into the show for our viewers to
Mhm.
hear this very momentous, iconic recording. Go ahead.
Now, before we sort of cut that off, tell us a bit more about your book and how we can get it.
Okay, well, we just finished the second book. I didn't I didn't want to do the first one, but the second one was actually a lot of fun. Uh, and I still read it. Pascagoula, the the shoot, I don't even remember the name. Pascagoula, the story continues. New evidence
Yeah.
and new witnesses.
Okay,
So
and it's available on Amazon or
Amazon,
on
yes, you can get
Amazon.
both of them on Amazon.
Good,
I
good.
have a personal question to ask you, Victor, with your blessing. Has any mainstream media interviewed you in the past? People like, mainstream ABC, NBC, CBS, any of these Fox people ever interviewed you, or have they been private media?
Who, me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm talking
I
to you,
went on
Calvin.
Water's World on Fox News, and that's a pretty major deal there. But yeah, it's been a lot of news media. I mean, just more than you can realize. In a year, I went from kind of being shy to doing a lot of public speaking and traveling and all this. And I've actually enjoyed it. I've met some great people out there. And as you said, people like Paul Heineck and, a lot of different ones in this field. And my quest is not so much to get around and go, but to find answers. That's all I'm after, is just a few answers.
What
Victor,
answers have you come up with so far?
It's about the same as I had when I started. I still don't know what happened and where I've been. All I know, a female got into bondage with me and run her fingers down my throat. So that's about the sum of it.
we don't envy you. I want to see if I can play this, if you don't mind, Victor. Which this is important, and I want to, get Calvin's take on this. Let me see if this is going to work. Okay.
Okay.
You guys hearing it?
No.
Don't hear a word.
Okay, then. All right, I'm going to post it. I'm going to post it differently. I guess I'm the only one that's hearing it now. I'm going to post it and edit it separately, and then post it online, because I think it could be very, very important. Please continue. I apologize for interrupting.
Yeah, that's okay. I just want to get to another point, because a lot of times when I've been speaking to people about this, especially in a group session, they usually have very different experiences and different interpretations of what's gone on, and I'm sort of how can I put it? I'm eager to find out if people who are watching this right now, either out of interest because it's on YouTube or whatever, but the people that are watching this right now who either know that they've had an experience and don't want to recognize it, or if there's something that you have said that triggers something in them to make them realize that they may have gone through something. What advice would you have for people who are sitting on the fence about, well, something happened, but I'm just not sure, and I've just dismissed it? What would you say to those people?
Well, for 45 years, I kept it a secret. I didn't even tell my wife about it or nothing. And you know how it is when you keep secrets from your wife, it keeps you in the doghouse.
Mm-hmm.
Then when this book came out, I actually sat her down and told her the story and all. And we've actually enjoyed this. And when I say enjoyed it, it's no enjoying this, but we've actually traveled together, been to conferences, and talked to other people that's been through this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what anybody needs to do. They need to get out and they need to meet people with similar experiences, talk to people, and they'll find some kind of help to learn to deal with it. And
Mm-hmm.
different people deal with different things,
Mm-hmm.
different ways.
Yeah. And I guess finally, what I'd like to kind of get from you is, what is now your interpretation after 45 years and writing the book and everything? What is your interpretation of the whole UFO ET engagement? Where do you think they're from? Why do you think they're here? What's your impression of what might be going on with respect to UFOs or UAP? What is your assessment now? Has it changed? Has it stayed the same, or what?
I still don't know the facts. I
Mm.
mean, I know something happened, and I know what happened to me and Charlie, but I don't know where they're from or who they are, or even if they are from another planet. I assume they are,
Mhm.
so because
But
that's when they left, that's the way they went, straight up.
straight up, yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, anyways, once again, Calvin Parker, thank you so much for joining us, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I know that everyone who is listening at this point in time will be enthralled not only by the last approximately 1 hour of your testimony, but I know that in picking up your book, they will be even more enthralled by your experience. So thank you very much, Calvin, and maybe we
Thank
can
you
do
for
this again
having me.
sometime.
Oh, I'd love to. And
Yeah.
thanks for
I,
having me.
well, I want to thank you as well on behalf of myself, Don Amigosino. And under separate covers, once I get this uploaded on YouTube, I'll send you the links and you guys could
Mhm.
enjoy this unique interview. And Victor, thank you for always doing a great job. I know I can always count on you. Thank you
Good.
very
Yeah.
much.
Well, yeah, I'd just like to mention one thing before we leave, Don. Anyone else who is listening right now, if they want to go to my website, Zland
Yeah.
Communications, that's ZLAND Communications, going on the web, you can find it. And if you wish to be well informed about what's going on politically with the UFO issue, I would encourage everyone who's listening to visit the Zland Communications website and take it from there. Thanks very much, Don, and once again to you, Calvin.
Thank y'all. I appreciate
Yeah.
y'all having me.
Much appreciated. Thank you, guys. Have a nice one. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.